Manx Radio Podcasts, powered by Shaw.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Hello and welcome to the latest look back at talking heads over the past week. Parking charges for politicians and government workers was by far the most popular topic this week, but there were also comments about the jury system and coastal erosion. And on Monday, changes to the standing charge for gas customers was the subject of debate. Here's Stu Peters.
Talking Heads, brought to you by Magic Carpets, with the only Carndine design showroom on the island.
Forthcoming changes to charges for gas customers are continuing to cause disquiet. The recently elected Glenn Faber MHK has asked Manx Gas to publish more information about its recent price restructuring. The moves, which will see users placed into bands according to how much gas they use, mean standing charges will go up while the unit price of gas will go down. But Geoffrey Boot says although people have been told which band they're in, the company hasn't given them information about how much gas they've used in the past. Should customers be given more information about how the new charging structure will affect them, or is the information distributed already adequate to explain the changes? First message is from Pat, which is bad news for me. I said that I got a letter to say I'm in band F. And I thought maybe it was just me and the power station that were in band F, because it seems a very high band for a modest little flat, but there you go. It seems that a lot of people are in that. Spoke to the UK OFT last week, says Pat. They informed me that the average gas consumption on the vast majority of homes within 2 to 4 bedroom is 15 to 19,000 KLW, is that kilolitre watts, or I don't know, or BTUs or whatever. This is band F here. All new homes built now have to comply with strict thermal loss values, and Manx Gas have realised that homes are now using less gas, which affects their profits. The only way to get over this loss is to increase the standing charges on the most popular bands, and here it's F. As most new homes built here are 2 to 3 bed, if you calculate gas consumed in band F and the drop in unit price, all people in band F will pay more every year, says Pat. Oh, that's bad news. I thought I might have saved a couple of quid. Our friend has moved into a new one-bed flat. Manx Gas have placed him in band F. He complained to Manx Gas and was told he was given the grade based on the island average. If after 3 months it's found he should be on band A, they'll adjust his tariff, but won't give him a refund on any overpayment in his first standing charge. Rip-off. No, I don't buy that. I don't buy that. If they put him in some sort of an arbitrary band to start him off and they find out it's the wrong one, then if they owe him money, I'm pretty sure, and I'm not a lawyer, but I'm pretty sure that they'd have to reimburse him. So your friend needs to double check on that with somebody, because, if any of the utilities overcharge you, then they've got a duty of care to pay it back, a legal duty to pay it back. I've been put on band F, can't work out how they got to that, so I requested a copy of the figures they used, but I haven't received it yet. And Dave called. If you look at the letter from Manx Gas, the first column, it shows what every customer pays now. Everybody pays £60.22. Is this the standing charge? In the new bands, it doesn't actually tell you what you'll pay. It gives you a unit per day. You have to get a calculator out to find out what you'll pay. Mine's going up to £278, but some will go up to £778 in the dearest band. They've knocked tuppence off the unit price, but what about next year and the year after? If they add that tuppence back on, then it'll just cancel out the discount and people will still be paying extra in the standing charge. Yeah. And what are the chances of that, do we think? Do we think that anybody's going to see much of a reduction in the gas bill? Or do we think it's going to go up for pretty much everybody? My bet is with the latter, but then I'm a cynic, I suppose. Isle of Man office fair trading needs to be disbanded. As much use as a chocolate teapot, says Paul. Somebody else called. It's important for people to take 2 things into account. First, people have been assessed over the past 5 years. The clear advice is, if you haven't been in the property for 5 years or you think your assessment's wrong, then ring Manx Gas and ask them to review it. Secondly, people have to see beyond the standing charge. The increase is all people seem to be seeing, but you have to take it all into account and don't let the increase in standing charge put you off using gas. If your bill's usually around £800, then continue to use gas as you usually do, and your overall bill at the end of the year will be pretty much the same, give or take 25 quid. If you've got to be at the top of your band to get the discount, but don't stop using gas. The only ones that will benefit are Manx Gas, and it won't heat your home in the winter. Stu, standing charges are to cover upkeep of infrastructure, not to hide the true cost of gas. We need a watchdog with teeth, says Bill. Well, do we need a watchdog, or do we need politicians looking after the interests of the people and not of these companies? Or is it not that simple? Are we all being a bit unfair? Maybe the fact that the Council of Ministers and the various departments have done this deal with Manx Gas is in the interest of consumers, but it just doesn't seem terribly transparent to me. Stu, I don't think this is anything to do with clarity but fairness. All most consumers want is a level playing field, dare I say a fair system. Standing charge, whatever it is, should be the same for all. Why should I pay 39 pence a day more than my neighbour for the same service? The UK Energy Watchdog have banned tiered standing charges, says David. That's interesting. Hi, I live in government property and moved in last October, says Margaret. My new tariff is based on previous 5 years of this property. I've been placed onto Band B, which is an increase of over 34 pence a day. I actually used only 2,295 units this year, but the band I've been given is for usage of 5,000 to 7,500. Totally unfair that I'm having to pay a higher tariff based on somebody else's history. I'm never going to use that much gas as I'm out at work all day, but the previous tenant was at home all day, therefore using more gas. They've not made allowances for this. My understanding, Margaret, is that you can get in touch with them and say, oi, just one moment there, chaps. This is all horribly wrong, and I'd like you to send somebody down now and just review this because it's wrong. Now, whether or not they'll do it, I don't know, but it's certainly worth a go. And if their bill is based on erroneous information, then it's up to them to make sure that it's right, isn't it? I'd give them a call, Margaret, and say, not happy with this, not paying it. Please send somebody round because I've got proof from previous gas bills what I actually use rather than what you think I might use. Just another example of clever businessmen running rings around our inept MHKs and civil servants. Links ban agreement, gas pipeline, just a couple of examples, says Steve. Oh, Steve, come on, down off the fence. I used to pay £65 for a 47-kilogram bottle of gas. Now Manx Gas has charged me £117. My sister lives 50 yards away and pays 65 quid for her gas. How does that happen? Can you not get the gas from the same place as your sister? I don't know how that works, to be honest. Let's go to the lines. We've got Viv on. Hello, Viv.
We moved to this property that we're currently in April of this year.
Yes.
We were warned before we came in that the heating costs seem to be excessively high.
Right. This is by the previous owner, is it, or whatever?
Sorry?
This is by a previous owner, or somebody said that
Yes.
it was expensive to heat. Right.
Yeah. We got our first bill within 6 weeks from Manx Gas, and it was horrendous.
Yeah.
We subsequently asked Manx Gas if they could check the boiler, which they refused to do.
Oh.
They said I would be far better off getting somebody independently in to check it, which we did. And it was found that there was actually a problem with the thermostat.
Right.
Of the boiler. Our subsequent bill that we got came down to approximately 2/3 of the original.
Yeah.
So it was obviously a problem with the thermostat. It's been replaced. But I would like to know, because we've only been here since April, are we being banded on what previous people have been paying?
I'm guessing so, given that we've had a couple of texts that would tend to make it look as though that's the way it's going to work. Yeah.
That's my indication.
Yeah.
In which case, surely Manx Gas should be taking into account, they obviously know when new people are in a property by a change of name.
Yeah.
That they should be doing it on the change of name, not the actual property.
Yep, they should. They should, but I mean, I suppose change of name, it doesn't necessarily, if you move from a small house to a big house, then you're going to use more gas, so the name doesn't have much to do with it. But the onus ought to be on Manx Gas to make sure that everybody is only paying the right amount for their gas all the time. And so, I mean, you don't know how much your gas is going to cost. If you moved in April, that's kind of the start of the decent weather when you don't need your central heating on so much. So, I mean, starting now, I would imagine that your gas prices, your gas bills are going to be fairly enormous again. So, nobody's really got anything to go off from the summer months, I don't suppose.
We haven't. We've got no facts and figures as to what they're basing it on, these different bans at all.
Right.
Which I think is totally wrong.
What else? When will this government realise there's only so much money to go around because of the gas charges increase? We'll now be cancelling our Sky subscription to help us pay to change to oil, so Manx Gas will lose out in the long run, says Derek. The government don't care about the people as long as the rich sponges are okay. Pay your share or get out, says Claire. If you cancel your gas supply today, you'd still have to pay for the next 3 months, says somebody else. Well, that doesn't particularly offend me in that you do have a contract with your energy suppliers. Simple, change to oil, everyone. Changing will send the message to MHKs and gas that you can't cheat us anymore, says Trevor. But what does it cost, Trevor, and can people afford that? I mean, this is another of those things that hits people who don't have a lot of spare cash. Stuart, another variant on Manx gas messing consumers about. When we moved in here, Douglas Gas, as it was then, fitted the pipe work so that we could cook with gas using cylinders. For 20 plus years, we had the cylinders from Douglas Gas, who then became Manx Gas. Then a year ago, Manx Gas told us that they would no longer supply cylinders, but suggested a supplier. The result was that the cylinder price, which had been £38.21 with Manx Gas, went up to £43 and a penny because there is an extra profit to be taken in the chain. It's a rip-off, says John W. OK.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Should the jury system in the Isle of Man be overhauled? And MHK is calling for reforms to be made. Chris Robert-Shaw is the member for Douglas East and will this week outline his concerns to Tynwald. He believes that a committee should be appointed to assess the way juries operate within the Manx court system. Part of his proposal includes increasing the standard number of jurors from 7 to 12, in line with that of England and Wales. Should the jury system in the island be reviewed, would 12-man juries be preferable to the current 7, or is the current system working just fine as it is? Michael's been on. He says, I very often agree with Chris Robert-Shaw, but I think he's wrong, very wrong on this, both from the cost perspective and the point that we only have a limited pool of jurors. Many of these are discounted because the Isle of Man is such a small place that everybody knows each other anyway. So selection would be an absolute nightmare. Best regards from Michael. Thank you, Michael. Stuart, if you're innocent until proven guilty, why are the press allowed to print your name, part of your address and the crime that you're accused of? Surely this would mean that people are judging you before your day in court. How can any jury say that they know nothing about the case or person, says Pete. Made me chuckle when Terence MacDonald said on Monday this morning that extra jury members would add extra costs when you see what lawyers charge, says Jack in Portsmouth Mary. Well, yeah. Bob called. Yes, there should be more than 7 people on a jury. There should be at least 9 or maybe even 12. What price for justice? How many jury trials do we actually have each year? It's not going to cost that much more to increase the numbers. Stu, I can't see it costing the taxpayer much more, as when I was called up, they offered a pittance. It certainly didn't cover anywhere near the money lost for not being at work. They couldn't tell me how long the trial would be, but was expected to last several weeks. I would have been bankrupt had I been chosen. As you have to attend, then they send you home if they have enough people. This is to combat people not showing up. And that's from Stu, the happy man that didn't get chosen. We're talking about jury trials, and we've got our first caller on this one, and it's our pal Tommy. Hello, Tommy.
I don't think there should be a jury at all, Stuart.
But isn't this, one of the basic tenets of the legal system that you're tried by your peers?
No, I don't think it should be, because let's face it, Stu. If you got a letter saying your heart goes down, most people don't want to be there, Stu, and they're not experienced. You made a salient point there, Stu, saying most people haven't been near a courthouse in their life, so they go into a place where it's alien to them, and they have to sit there day after day. And probably half of them start nodding off there, Stu. I mean, it should be three judges, in my opinion, Stu. I mean, what have he studied at the bar for and got their silk, Stu? Is that just for nothing?
No, it's to actually try or to defend cases, isn't it? And surely, I mean, that's the whole thing about you've got lay people forming the jury, and you've got the court officials and the legal system there to make sure that everything is presented to them as a simple sort of a yes/no decision to make. So, I mean, that's the way that the whole thing is predicated, isn't it? Surely.
Well, it's wrong in my opinion, Stu, because most people, human beings, form an instant opinion, Stu. I mean, we've all done it. If you've been out somewhere, you see somebody, and they might be the nicest person on the planet, Stu, because they've got maybe something thing, they say, "Oh, I don't like the look of him."
Oh, I'd be rotten as a juror, because if their eyes were too close together, I'd hang them. So I mean,
well, exactly, Stu, and say there was they couldn't reach it, they kept on going back saying that the jury hasn't reached a decision, and it was one person. I bet you that person in the end would go over with 11 just to try and get out of that place. The whole system is crazy, Stu. I mean, why are the judges there? I mean, they're just to guide the case through.
Well, yeah, but in most cases, it is dealt with by a deemster, isn't it? I would suggest that there are very few jury trials compared to normal sort of courtroom procedure. Most of it is sort of magistrates' court level kind of stuff.
Yeah, exactly. I was just going to say, the magistrates' court, there's usually 3 of them there, and they sum it up, and they see them nodding to each other, and they come to a conclusion.
Yeah.
I mean, the jury system is just outdated as far as I'm concerned, Stu.
What else? Stu, I don't recall anyone ever complaining about the jury system. Mr. Robert Shaw is the master of vanity politics, a man who indeed seems to want to be judge and jury of everyone's lives. That from Albert. Okay. Albert, again, further to my last email, here are some quotes to put this subject into context. When you go into court, you're putting your fate into the hands of 12 people who weren't smart enough to get out of jury duty. I like that. We operate under a jury system in this country, and as much as we complain about it, we have to admit that we know of no better system except possibly flipping a coin. And finally, a jury consists of 12 persons chosen to decide who has the better lawyer. 3 brilliant quotes, Albert. You've enriched my life today. Thank you very much for that. Stu, I agree with Tommy. Get rid of the jurors, use the American system. Shoot first, ask questions later. Well, that's the traffic offences sorted. Now for the more serious crimes. Let loose the dogs, says Mal. Thank you, Mal. Not helping particularly, but made me smile. Did it a few years ago. Got as much money as I would have had working for a week. Was thinking of turning up each week in disguise, but it was boring. Court usher was asleep most days, says John. No, just sort of resting his eyes, possibly. Hi, Stu. Just to add, I'm self-employed, so I can't survive on the wage jury service pays. From Fact Frank the First. Good. Okay. Well, I think that's fair if you can't afford it.
Talking Heads, brought to you by Magic Carpets, with the only Carndine design showroom on the island.
You're listening to the latest Talking Heads podcast, featuring highlights from the programme over the past week.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Should government staff, including Tynwald members, pay for their parking spaces while at work? The introduction of a policy which would see senior government workers charged was halted in the Tynwald Chamber last night. Most members said that they didn't object to the idea of politicians paying for parking, but branded the policy in relation to government workers flawed, questioning the legality of the policy and the intent within the document and where and to whom the charges would apply. Ramsey MHK Leonard Singer called for the motion to be adjourned until December. That call for an adjournment was withdrawn after it was pointed out the motion would be brought back without revision. After more than an hour of debate over the issue, Infrastructure Minister Phil Gorn responded to some of the comments made, urging his colleagues to support the motion. Although the majority of MHKs voted in favour of the policy, the Legislative Council voted the motion down by 6 votes to 3. So, should the policy be reviewed again? Should it be broadened to include all public servants island-wide? Or is the idea of charging higher earners in areas where the public pay for parking in Douglas fair as it stands? Stu, my MHK and Legco members from South Douglas proved that they're not to be trusted. Malarkey said in the Tynwald that he would pay for the parking and so should others, but when it came to the vote, Malarkey and Cretney voted against paying to park, says Pat. Okay. Has any consideration been given to all the civil servants like my wife, who was pulled into Douglas in the recent centralisation of services? She's already suffered a massive effective cut in income as a result of the extra travel and wear and tear on a car without having to pay for parking on top. There must be many more in similar circumstances, says Kevin. Okay, it's a point. Stu, shame on the out-of-touch members who voted against parking charges. I thought we're all in this together. Roll on the next election, says Bill. Absolute cop-out by MLCs, what makes them and other top civil servants better than the rest of the population? We have no say in increases, we just have to pay them. Who voted against the proposal and when did they last face the electorate, if ever? And with what mandate do they have to be able to sit there and help form laws that we have to live by? I hope this is the straw that breaks the camel's back and is the start of the end for this out-of-date and waste of taxpayers' money government, says Alan. I mean, if you're trying to be fair about it, the job of Legislative Council is to review proposed legislation, isn't it? It is a revising chamber. So especially at a time less than 12 months to a general election, the MHKs might be a little bit windy about this, whereas the job of the MLCs is not to be biased by public opinion and to do the right thing. So they might well say, whether we agree with them or not is a different thing, they might well say, no, it was bad legislation, it needs to be sorted out. So just a thought. Listening to Alf Cannon in the Keys yesterday saying that they've taken a pay cut this last 5 years with having to pay for their pension and not getting paid mileage to go to work. Now no free parking. He was the one who said that Gravy Train was outdated with terms and conditions for manual workers. Alf, you're a joke. I won't be voting for you next year. Double standards, says somebody. Let's go to the lines and see what Jill thinks about it. Hello, Jill.
I'm sorry, but I think they should pay.
Yep.
I know it won't please a lot of people, but if we go into town, we have to pay.
Yep.
And my son and daughter-in-law have to pay when they go to work. And after all, that is allegedly what the government are doing when they go into town.
So, the argument is, and I think a lot of the people who voted against it said, well, it's not for us. Don't get confused. This isn't that we're not prepared to pay. We are, but we think that this legislation is flawed. We think it's unfair on government workers. But it is only the higher paid government workers who are going to have to pay. So it seems as though it's fair as far as low paid government employees are concerned.
Yeah, but, it's sort of, everybody else can pay, but not them.
Well, that's how it's coming over. And, in politics, the perception is often as important as the fact. So, whatever the reason that these people, both in the Keys and Legco, voted against this, the perception is that they voted against it because they're tight and they don't want to pay. Now, they would say, and I noticed David Cretney's posted on Facebook and said, it's not, that I'm not prepared to pay myself, but I think it's wrong and I think that there are flaws in this as far as public servants are concerned. So, but the perception still is that it's the politicians who want a free ride and the rest of us are going to have to pay, isn't it?
Well, not so long ago, they were suggesting that health workers should pay and community nurses, etc., need their cars.
Sure.
So why should they have to pay when they're in Douglas?
OK, some good points there. Thank you for your call, Jill. Let's have a look at some more texts and emails. Tynwald have no intention of sharing their cake with Joe Public. Parking and pensions will be protected for public sector workers. Again, that's the perception. Stu, this government's a vile corporation in regards to parking. We're not in it together. Time for a clean sweep of all MHKs. Stu, have they issued a figure of how much the Treasury would benefit from a policy of all officers and members paying for parking? Asks AJ. I seem to remember it was 100,000 a year or something like that. Now, I might be wrong. That might be a flawed memory. Most of mine are these days. But I seem to think it was 100 grand a year or something like that. Stu, simple solution to the government parking debate. If people don't want to pay, don't charge them. Remove their parking privilege and tell them to arrange their own parking privately. It always amuses me that whenever government members are asked to contribute to anything, there's always a debate and a vote. Why is this same luxury not afforded to Joe Public when it's decided that we will conform to their decisions? I hope that the voting public remember all this at the next election, says Mal. Thank you, Mal. Let's see what Mary thinks. Hello, Mary.
I also think everybody should pay, and I can understand why it was not voted for in Tynwald yesterday, because it is flawed. And the reason anybody 35,000 and above would have to pay is because that's when the MHK's salary starts, so it has to include in it the MHK's.
Right.
That's the reason, and I think Mr Gorn is just making it easy, less hassle from 35,000 upwards. Okay. Everybody should pay. I find, and that guy who was on before about his wife having, being moved to Douglas to work, what on earth does he think the rest of the private sector do?
Yeah, well, people would say that, hang on a minute, if you work for a bank or an insurance company, you might get free parking as a perk of the job.
No, they don't. No, they don't. A lowly bank worker in the bottleneck car park, no, they don't. I worked in the private sector for 35 years. No, we didn't.
Well, I think Phil Gorn said, didn't he, that, this isn't perfect, and yes, there might be some flaws in it, but they can go back to later sittings at Tynwald and tweak it until it's right.
I hope so. Well, he's gone for the easy option at the moment, I'm afraid, and it's not good enough.
All right, good stuff. Thank you for your call, Mary. On line 3, we've got John Dogg. Hello, John.
I don't think they should have to pay.
Oh.
Now, people might think, well, it goes with the territory, like policemen get uniforms, nurses get uniforms. I'm just throwing that in as an example. It goes with the job. I have to buy all my work clothes, stuff. A lot of these things go with the job. I think MHKs, and again, you might think, I've got a hard job. Everybody's at them. No matter what they do, it's like a referee. You make a decision. There's half the people are moaning about what you said and what you're going to do. So, and why shouldn't they have free park and they have to go in? I think it goes with the territory.
Well, people would say that they're pretty well paid for doing a fairly easy job. You don't think that's true?
Well, what about, so if I go up to Douglas, they're going to say, how much money you've got? Oh, we'll let you park free if you're on low wages. That's just, again, goes with the territory. Right. There's people far better paid than them. And last Lady Mary was on about banks don't have car parks. I've been involved with going around some of these buildings trying to doing work inside for them. Just parking for not all, the bulk of the workers have got their own car park.
Right.
So, again, it goes with the territory. If you're going to go for work for the firm, you pick one that's got free parking for you, as opposed to one you might have to pay for a car park.
All right, it's a different point of view than I expected from you, John, but thank you very much for your call today. Somebody called said the simple answer to the question, should MHKs pay for their parking, is yes. But is the document presented to them all right? No, it isn't. It's flawed. If it's forced through, it could cost the government a lot in legal arguments and could be withdrawn in 6 months like many other DOI items. There's a simple way of making MHKs pay for the parking, reduce their expenses by £500, but not this. Okay, I think that one of the comments that Phil Gorn came out with is that this isn't going to come in until April. It's only going to be, from memory, it's only going to be a quarter of the final cost of parking. And it gives them plenty of time between now and April to iron out any problems with it, surely. So I don't know about that. Patrick called. There's one word in all this that keeps coming up, fair. But what is fair? What's seen as fair by one wouldn't be seen the same way by another. So it's a misnomer, a red herring. It's the same with the rating system. People say they want a fair system, but when they end up with one that they might not think is fair, it's one of those words that means sweet nothing. As for parking at Manx Radio, your car park isn't in a disc zone, so saying that you should pay is nonsense. People get wound up about the parking issue, but it's meaningless really. MHKs work hard and free parking is a perk. People say it's easy being a politician, but it's not. They have loads of paperwork to go through and they have to make decisions, and of those decisions, some of them people won't like. I think they should pay for parking, but it doesn't matter. Who were the MHKs and MLCs who voted against the parking charges? Name and shame. Well, it's not actually been published by Hansard yet, but it is on social media, and I believe that this is a correct list. Apologies in advance if I've got any of these names wrong, but I believe that the MLCs who voted against it were Michael Coleman, Jeff Corkish, David Cretney, Bill Henderson, Ewan Turner and Tony Wilde. I believe that the MHKs who voted against it were Alf Cannon, Graham Crageen, Zach Hall, Bill Malarkey, David Quirk and Leonard Singer. Like I say, that's from social media, not from Hansard, so it's not an official list at the moment, but to the best of my knowledge, those are the people who voted against it. There are huge numbers of multi-storey and other car parking spaces taken up by businesses on contracts for their staff, including some for retired staff, really. On a level playing field, those staff should each be made to pay too, says Jenny. Forgot to say, if you don't like paying the fees, get the bus. That's from Dog. My son works for the government office and he pays every day to park, says Brian. Yeah. Private sector workers in the financial sector pay £1,200 a year to park. If in government car park it's £1,400 in their proposal, they were getting half price, all should pay. Look at the free parking for poker stars on the highway round Onchan Head. Well, again, that's outside of central Douglas, so I don't know that particularly applies. The ordinary guy or gal working in Douglas whose company owns land do, for the most part, have car parking charges deducted from their salary, says Renee. Interesting. So if you do get free parking with the job and you're in the private sector, for a lot of people, that perk is actually deducted from pay. It's taken as part of your pay. Interesting. Good on John Dog. Well said from Mike, not a politician, he says. Robin Peel, I think they should pay because it's something that causes resentment. People would think a lot better of them if they did, but I'm only talking about the top civil servants and politicians, concludes Rob. Private sector parking isn't taxpayers' money. That's a very erudite point, yes. I think that kind of distills a lot of these comments, actually. Private sector parking, we shouldn't be talking about that in the same breath because that's not taxpayers' money. No charges for staff under 34 grand. Government think that low pay is 34 grand. Oh, my God. And real world spring to mind. Is the David Quirk parking charge object to the missing OFT David Quirk? What a relief. He cares about something, says Brian. Slightly unfair. I wonder how many of these experts who constantly decry the MHKs will put themselves up for election next year. My guess is nil. I certainly wouldn't want to do it, as their families would be constantly suffering, as well as the MHK. That's from John in Farm Hill. Yeah, well, I've said that in the past. You know, that it sounds very easy on the outside, doesn't it, to be an MHK? I think that the current administration, for all its faults, has had the most difficult job in 30 years, probably in Manx politics, trying to balance the books.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
should the government commit to tackling coastal erosion. The MHK for Michael has expressed his disappointment at a failed motion to evaluate coastal protection works in his constituency. Alf Cannon's plan for action was overridden by an amendment from Peter Carron in Wednesday's Tynwald setting. Was Tynwald right to reject the idea of committing government to spending millions of pounds on the problem at this stage? Is it important that the issue is investigated fully before any money is pledged? Or would you prefer to see the commitment made? Who do you agree with on this? For years, there's been coastal erosion in Kirkmichael. Why did they let Dandara build there? Any idiot could see that there was going to be problems. And no, I don't think the taxpayer should pay. Well, I think that any money spent there is to try and stop the entire village falling into the sea over time. So, surely it is something that the taxpayer ought to fund. I don't think they're talking about protecting individual houses per se. Might be wrong. Tynwald members already have 2 reports done by consultants for the whole island in the last 25 years. Oh, really? OK, I didn't know that. A new review will tell them nothing that they don't already know. Only area of coast of any concern about erosion is the northwest coast. What a waste of time and money again. Geology is beginning to look quicker than Tynwald. Tectonic plates moving faster than Tynwald members. That's from Mary. Thank you, Mary. Well, if that's if that's the situation, if they've had 2 reports by consultants about coastal erosion over the last 25 years, you're absolutely right. Why do they need another one? And it does seem that the only area that's particularly affected is around Kirkmichael. So, I think you make a very good point there. Stu, I have no sympathy for those people who buy houses next to the coast. It's their own fault. If anything happens, taxpayers should not be bailing out people's inept decisions to buy these properties. I mean, it's not just the people, is it? I'm amazed that if these houses that you're talking about are in danger of falling off the edge of a cliff, then you'd have thought that the planners would have had to have done something about it. The people who granted mortgages, unless they were cash purchases, and I assume that most of them were bought with mortgages, surely the mortgage lenders must have done due diligence and decided that the things weren't likely to fall into the sea anytime soon. So I don't know, but I think it's a bit unfair to blame the people who bought houses. And maybe they have done the due diligence and they've decided that they'll see their remaining years out without it being a problem. Don't know. Countries all over the world protect their coastal towns with rocks. The Isle of Man seems to be the only one that doesn't think it works once they've protected the grass over and are protected from wind and rain. After Kirkmichael, there's only a handful of houses by the coast, so it doesn't matter after that, says Matty. Thank you, Matty. Speaking of boys, the boy Brindley is with me in the studio.
I'm not really a boy anymore, that's the problem.
Allegedly knows something about coastal erosion, which I call you on that. You know about steam trains, you know a bit about sort of amusement parks and things. You don't know anything about anything else.
Well, when it comes to coastal erosion, there is a series of schools videos that Charles Gard and myself made in association with the Department of Education. They're not publicly on sale, but they are used as part of the national curriculum, and one of them was about coastal erosion on the Isle of Man.
Okay.
And we went filming up in Kirkmichael, next to the estate that everybody knows of. I know it was nicknamed the King Canute Estate when it was planned. And interestingly enough, a number of the residents weren't very happy with us filming anywhere near their properties because it was highlighting the issue of coastal erosion.
Ah, right.
But when we looked at the Posforth de Vivier report, which is the one that the government commissioned in 2000, and we spoke with Tony Brown at the time, who was the minister, and one of the things you do notice with coastal erosion is where you put rock armour to protect the coast, where the rock armour stops, it actually intensifies the coastal erosion, the power of the sea in that area. It creates swirling eddies, and the sea effectively chews in at greater speed at the edge and goes behind your protection. So once you've protected that section, you have to keep on going on protecting.
So, this is what Alf Cannon, the MHK, wants to do, isn't it? He wants to put rock armour in there. So are you saying that might not be the solution?
It'll be a short-term solution, but it will be continually need to be maintained. If you look at the rock armour that's already at Glenwillan, it's protected the outflow of the river at the end of the glen, but it's now standing proud because the sea is eating away at either side at even a greater speed than it was before.
Well, I know a bit about aerodynamics, and I suppose that hydrodynamics are a bit the same. Can you not design it in such a way that it doesn't allow that to happen?
To be honest, you would pretty much have to, if you wanted to stop the problem of coastal erosion in the north of the island, you pretty much go from just below Kirkmichael all the way around to Ramsey, because the whole of the northern of the island is a glacial deposit. Yeah. It's all sand and gravel left over after the last ice age, and that will erode. Right. They've got the problem up at Bride that in a few years' time, at the what was Wright's Pit East,
the tip is near to the coast that is eroding. So at some point we're going to have to stop an old rubbish tip of ours washing into the sea. These are problems that we're always going to be faced with.
All right, so Peter Caron's idea then to look a bit wider afield than just Kirkmichael might not be a bad idea after all.
Yes, in my humble opinion.
But what about Mary's point earlier on that, we've had 2 reports in 25 years looking at the whole island, so why do we need another one now?
Well, once again, in my opinion, I don't think we probably do. Coastal erosion hasn't changed. The problem is the price tag will be huge in order to protect those areas. Whether it is worth it for that price tag, that's for someone else to decide. But there was one interesting point we did get from an interview within government, and that was that I heard a point earlier on about someone saying, well, why were you allowed to build there anyway?
Yes.
Well, there is this point that was made that we did these reports, we said that this area of land is eroding, and you decided to build on it anyway. It's a case of how nanny-statey do you want the government to be?
Yeah.
As in, we told you this is going to be a problem.
Yeah.
How much would you like us to
Well, I suppose
properly?
if people have gone into it with their eyes open, it's their choice, isn't it? Yeah. All
Which
right,
is
good
interesting.
points.
Interesting.
Good stuff. Well, so there's a third thing that you know about that I can call you on in future.
A bit.
All right. Thank you, Alex. Let's have a look at some more comments then. Maybe they could designate Kirkmichael Beach as the only place for dog walkers to use. See, I love how you can turn a problem into a benefit. All of the dog deposits can then be piled up to create a sea defence. 2 problems solved in one go. That's from Cynical Sam. Cynical, really? Stu, if you think about it, we're all living on the coast as we're only 13 miles wide and 31 miles long, true. Marine Drive being one of the main erosion areas, as well as the north, such as Ramsey. I agree there isn't a need for another report, as we seem to be penny wise and pound foolish, so action is needed. No more words. We hope to retire in 20 years' time to Kirkmichael, so let's hope it's still going to be there, says Nick. Yeah, I watched Silent Man from the Air last night, and it talks a lot about erosion around Kirkmichael. A homeowner bought his own sea defences, and the land is eroding either side of his house, instead leaving his land like a promontory sticking out into the sea. That was filmed in 2001. Yeah, I remember it. I used to work at Duke Video at the time. So God knows what it's like now. Right, okay. Stu, does Alf Cannon not realise there's no money to fund coastal erosion? As a contributor suggested on your show a few weeks back, it'd be cheaper to compensate anyone whose house falls into the sea than spend millions on sea defences. Or perhaps if you pay for parking, that money can go towards it, says Ian.
Talking Heads, brought to you by Magic Carpets, with the only Carndine design showroom on the island.
That's it for the latest look back at Talking Heads. Our thanks as ever to everyone who contributed to the programme. If you'd like to get involved in the discussion, you can call, text or email between midday and 2 p.m. on weekdays. Or you can share your thoughts anytime you like on the Facebook page. That's Talking Heads with Stu Peters. You can listen back to each day's programme in full using the on-demand section of manxradio.com, and you'll also find an update of what's being discussed on the programme each day on the website. You can also keep up to date with that information by liking the Facebook page or following Stu Manx on Twitter. And if there's anything you think we should be discussing on the programme, let us know by emailing talk@manxradio.com. But that's it for now, so until next time, goodbye.
Don't sit in the slow lane. Join the fast lane right now with Shaw's all-new Superfast Plus broadband. Enjoy more bandwidth, amazing speeds and the best value on the island from just £23.95 per month. So don't be left behind. Get a piece of the high-speed action with Superfast Plus broadband from Shaw. For details, visit our stores in Douglas, Ramsey and Port Erin or click shaw.com.
Love being Shaw.
Terms and conditions apply.